I still remember, like, I went to this VC in Bangalore and had this meeting, spent an hour. And then at the end of the meeting, the feedback I got was, I don't think this idea can even raise $100,000, right? You're wasting your time.
How many near-death experiences have you had, like in terms of like where you're actually worried about you making
Stop
payroll?
counting.
Stop counting.
Okay.
We said if there was zero convenience during this time, and it was a huge inconvenience in everyone's life, what are we charging our convenience fees for? When I was finishing business school, I saw this Indian movie called Swades. That movie struck something in me.
If there's a bad news, the bad news got to travel faster than good news. And they came back and they said that, what if we take like 50% salary cut, all of us, and get through this? So you don't have to let go of anybody.
When we were sitting in a train, every now and then we would hear someone asking someone else, "Kahan pahunchi?" which means, where's the train right now? Right? So we were like, this is the highest frequency use case while someone is sitting in a train. Both of us believe the best marketing is product. It's very interesting that between February 21, January 21 and August 21, we did 2 acquisitions, 1 fundraise and 1 DRHP filing in parallel. These are things we did, and this is all sitting at home.
First of all, thanks again for coming today. Congrats again on an amazing IPO. I think there was $4 billion in demand for your IPO.
5 actually.
Sorry, $5 billion. $5 billion in demand and over roughly 100x oversubscribed. That's probably the highest in recent history. Is that not correct or not? You know the answer.
Probably.
So that's amazing. So congrats again, and obviously we've been fantastic partners for the last 13 years. So thrilled to be here with you again today. I was at the IPO party and I noticed that that great tagline you guys had was resilience, resurgence, rebirth. And so we thought that we'd make that the kind of title for this podcast. Steal your great idea. And it struck me as that it's more resilience, resurgence, resilience, and then rebirth. Or at least from a high level perspective. There's one extra resilience in there. But maybe we can start from the beginning and talk about when you first started. I know we talked about this a little bit at the IPO, or you did at the IPO. Kind of walk us through like when you first got started, living in your sister's apartment, as you mentioned, and those first 4 or 5 years were clearly not easy as you headed into the financial crisis. But maybe start there. What motivated you to start what you started back then?
Yeah. So going back to the start, right? Rajnish and I went to IIT together. We were wingmates in hostel, and then we worked for Amadeus, which was a European travel tech company. And I think even when we worked there, we always wanted to escape the daily routine of where it was 35-hour work weeks that we were doing there.
It was illegal to work beyond 35. So we had to take like special permission to work on the weekends, and our bosses were like, "Are you crazy? Why do you want to work on weekends? Like, go to the beach. Have some fun."
Maybe I should launch there then, actually. Competitive advantage.
So I escaped that by going to business school. And then when I was finishing business school, I saw this Indian movie called Swades, where the protagonist is a NASA engineer who comes back to India and then has this love for doing something in India, for India, right? And that movie struck something in me, and I packed my bags and went to Antibes, where he was living. And we had this session where we discussed what the hell are we doing with our lives? Like, maybe we should just go back to India and build something, right? That was the starting trigger, right? This was sometime in 2005. And then 2006, we actually came back, took an apartment not too far from this office of yours, and started.
Real estate was really cheap back then.
In Gurgaon, yes, affordable back then. And we basically at that time did not really know what we were going to build, but we knew that we wanted to do something in travel because we spent our career, we started our career in travel tech, and India that time was booming. There were new airlines coming up. There were OTAs coming up. There were 3 OTAs that are already launched when we started, and we said, this is the sector we want to take a big bet on.
And why Metasearch? What was the, why did you start off with Metasearch?
I think it was just the DNA. Like we were, so this obsession with customer problem, that's I think at the core of everything that we did till now. And I think that's going to be the same thing going forward, 20 years fast forward. Boring playbook, and boring is good. So we thought that like the biggest challenge, us as Indians, we are deal hunters. So we wanted to compare everything, and we were looking at the Indian market, like it was mushrooming with low cost carriers. Like they had like 3-4 OTAs coming up. They all got funded. So we thought there was this. The problem was big enough to solve. So we said, well, we'll compare everything and showcase it in the form of Metasearch, which is what Kayak was doing in the US. So we built that, and also because we were not really people who had gotten into like operational side of the business ever. So we were more like tech product guys. So we wanted to build something which was leveraged using tech and product, and it was like the easiest thing to do.
And it was the desktop era of the internet, so they were like 10-15 million internet users. That's it, and they were all mostly flyer type of people back then, right? So it kind of made sense at that point of time to do that business model.
So you started a Metasearch company 2007, and walk us through the story in terms of fundraising. What happened, and we'll go from there.
So when we started, the first meeting we had about finances, both Rajnish and I figured out at that point that we were broke already. So both of us...
Not just broke, like, I think I was in debt as well.
Yeah, so both of us had debt actually. I still had my B school loan to pay off, and he had some personal debt as well. And then we were like, okay, if we model on a spreadsheet, we should just go back home right now, like do something else. But we were so passionate about building this Metasearch engine for India that I think we said, let's give it at least a year to build something, prove to ourselves that we can essentially launch something that people like, and and then we'll see, right? Like, so there was no definite plan on what next, etc. The only thing is, we started running out of money very quickly. So we were, of course, on zero salaries. We didn't have any money. We just had enough to pay our sort of rent and servers, etc. But I started calling up frantically my B school friends. So people who trusted me became my first angel investors, and we were lucky to have a few of them give enough money to last for almost a year and a half, right? But around the end of 2007, we were already running out. So this 6 months post-launch, we've pitched to all VCs in India, which is like maybe 6 or 7 VCs at that time, right? And nothing's moving, right? And then we went even to all the so-called seed investors, angel groups, etc., and nothing really moved. We had multiple meetings. I still remember, like I went to this VC in Bangalore and had this meeting, spent an hour. And then at the end of the meeting, the feedback I got was, I don't think this idea can even raise $100,000, right? You're wasting your time. And Rajnish would remember this moment, like we felt the most dejected that night, and I couldn't sleep actually. But we said, let's do something to prove these people wrong, right? And we didn't. And at that moment, I think we were so broke that we wrote a check for buying a printer for the office. And the guy actually was next day at our office door saying, hey, your check bounced, right? So we were that broke at that moment. But we get this call on our borderline number from a guy called William Clifton, based out of Singapore. And he says, I've played around with your site. It's probably the best UI I've seen in Asia. And why don't you guys come down to Singapore and pitch to my partnership? And we run a small seed fund here. And we were like, we're so broke that we don't have money to go to, Singapore. But we just sort of asked, I think I asked my relatives and friends to sort of, and
anyway, only one person could go. There was not
only one of us could go there. So bought a ticket, went there. I stayed at a friend's place in Singapore. I couldn't afford the hotel. Pitched to these guys. I got a term sheet within a few days, right? In fact, the moment I pushed and came down to the hotel lobby, William comes down with a draft term sheet in his hand saying, we liked it so much that, let's ask what the terms you're looking for right now. So I think that was a crucible moment for us, because had that not happened, we would have been dead that year.
How much did you raise?
We raised $500,000 back in early 2000s. I think it was February 2008. It was Valentine's Day when it closed. I remember.
Just like a DRHP filing.
And and that's the moment where I think the first time we felt that somebody believes in us beyond the two of us, right?
And then, which in context was not a lot of money. For consumer internet in 2007 in India, the OTAs, Make My Trip, Yatra, Clear Trip, I don't remember, there are a few others at that point in time, Travel Guru, I think, all raised over $10 million and multiples of that in some cases. How did you survive? So you didn't raise money again until 2011, I believe. Or did you raise money in the interim period at all or not?
So the interim period is a very interesting story. And I think we made all the classical mistakes every funded company makes when they raise money, which is we moved into a bigger office, hired a lot of people, started spending a lot of money on marketing, instead of spending even more time on product and experience, right? And I think
That's
by the time
that's $500,000.
that's just with $500,000. So the catch is that we were already kind of running out of money by the end of 2008. But before that, something very interesting happened. I mean, we got a VC who was interested. We got a term sheet from them, and we were in diligence. But then Lehman Brothers happened, so that round didn't close, unfortunately. But that's the moment where we realized that we had probably 2 months of burn in the bank, 3 months maybe, right? This was September, October 2008. Back to the same situation as we were when William invested, right? I think that again became a defining moment of the company. And Rajnish, you want to tell that story?
Yeah, it was tough because I think when we look back at our evolution and we see that today we have a culture of resilience, and we look back and see how that happened, because initially you did not set out any rule book to say that this is our culture XYZ. But I think this was one of those defining moments that when we took that decision went on to define this culture of ours, which was we just had no clue what to do. So we said that, the best thing is that you got to be honest about it. If there's the bad news got to travel faster than good news. So we went ahead and we told the team that we are in deep shit. And this is what it is. Like, we got 2 months of burn left, and we're about 18 people, I think.
About 21,
22, roughly like that. And said, the only way we can survive for a little longer and go through this is by firing like half of you. And we just told them, like,
that's the only option we can think of, unless you have some better options.
Yeah. So there was one guy, my junior from IDK, Com Science. He was in the team, and like we had become very close when I used to go out to movies and play with him, etc. So he raised his hand and he said that, I have an idea. Give us 5 minutes. We went back to the room, discussed with the whole team, and they came back. And they said that, what if we take like 50% salary cut, all of us, and get through this? So you don't have to let go of anybody. And we can survive for like 3 to 6 months, and then we'll fight through this, and we'll get you across the line. And that's it.
And not just that, we called up our landlord and said, we don't have money to pay rent. The guy was nice enough to come to our office, meet us, and say, how much rent can you pay? And we can pay 40%, maybe 50%, right, for the next 6 months. And I don't know after that, right? He said, fine, just pay us that. And we were very lucky to have these kind of people who could take these calls at that moment of time, and that kind of saved the company, because I don't think the team has worked hard in the way we worked during 2009 to build crazy amount of things. 2009-10, we launched Meta for hotels. We launched the train information pages, which became the seeding point.
Metasearch as well. All of that in that time frame of like hardly like 6 to 9 months, because we were like on steroids.
Did you lose any folks during this period of time?
No,
not a single.
So out of the 21 people, 18 people you mentioned, they all stayed despite taking half salary cuts, and obviously they could have gotten jobs elsewhere if they wanted to.
And not just that, we gave all of them ESOPs. And today, if I look back, I think almost 2/3 of that team are entrepreneurs at this point of time, or they've already built and sold companies, etc. So I think that resilience.
Can you give us those names?
But
a lot. I think the Ixigo mafia, if I can call it, is pretty big now. I think last time I counted was like almost 24 companies that came out.
We actually just funded one now that I think about it a few months ago. So
yes, quite a lot of them.
So yeah, I think that moment of time and the decisions we took there and the transparency we had with the team became like the template for all such future crises that we ever faced. And that template just works beautifully, at least for us. It always worked.
Yeah, because the other thing that we did was that, like, sometimes, the team thinks that you are superhuman as founders. Like, they think that, you guys are like, we don't have any weakness, no vulnerability. So, but in times like these, like, it was Like we just showed them that, we didn't have a clue of how to navigate through this, and we were as vulnerable as any of those guys. So, and I think that kind of gave them the strength to say, okay, they need us. Like they had our back before, and now we need to have their back. And so they came back together, fought it back, and we became profitable. Like by end of that,
By 2010, I think we were kind of
on a very small base,
break-even-ish
of
on a
course.
very small base.
But then you
right?
met us and started losing money again.
Yeah, that's the point where we started getting inbound again. And I think, the interesting thing was that was also the moment when mobile just started to emerge, right? 2011 is when early signs of mobile adoption and cheaper smartphones were all in place. Yeah.
So let's move to the next
chapter.
chapter, which is Resurgence now. So you survived. You lived to fight another day through those 4 years. Pretty dark days, obviously, globally, not only in your business as well. So 2010, 2011 rolls around. The market starts coming back again. You raise venture funding. Let's talk about that next phase of what happened.
Yeah, so 2011 when Elevation invested, and I think that's the point where we had just realized that we had already built like the largest meta by traffic. I think we'd crossed like 1 million plus MAUs by then on, and this was largely mobile web, desktop web, right? But one thing became clear that we would have to find ways to grow, which were not following the playbook of classical Western OTAs. When I say classical Western OTAs, I mean you launch for flights, and then you build hotels, you monetize, and you build a OTA like that. I mean, that's the template everybody in the world followed, including the incumbents in India. The insight we got was there were so many people sitting in small towns who had started to come in online because of cheaper smartphones and access to 3G at that time, which later became 4G and now 5G, right? And I think we were in a way ahead of our times in thinking that all the future growth is going to come from this part of the market, right? Because it was obvious that in a market where at that point 3% of Indians were flying, even today that's 4%, in a market where you have such low penetration of air, it didn't make a lot of sense to put air at the core of any business. And so around 2013 is when we actually pivoted our thinking around rail. And one of the things that led to that was when we saw our own traffic statistics, the fastest growing pages on our website were all rail related, right? It was very obvious that's where the action is. And we said, why not take a deep bet on rail on mobile, right? So that was the big pivot that led to a lot of the growth in the next 10 years.
But that pivot happened in a room, actually. It's a very interesting story. So we just thought that we had to do something about this like huge bottom of the pyramid, right? And we were kind of at a point where we were like figuring out how to grow. So we had kind of hit like glass ceiling in terms of the desktop internet users. So I got like a couple of engineers, like the best I had. In fact, 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess 3 of them. Yeah. And 4 of us, we got inside a room for almost like a month and a half. And, we came out with like 4 different apps. Like the idea was to kind of figure out, what can grow and look at the problems of the users and try to see if we can solve them. And, one of the apps that came out became like the genesis of what we had, which is basically trains. And that's how it all started. So the problem was very simple, right? People had this issue of tracking the status of trains in real time. And it was very hard because you had to go to this website and put the PNR number and then check the status like every now and then. And you had to keep checking it every day because remember the 30% tickets are waitlisted. And you don't know if the ticket gets confirmed or not until the day of travel. And it was like a huge problem for people. Like they had to keep looking at it, like go to the website, put the CAPTCHA and check it. Now this app, what it did is like, it would just kind of figure out your PNR, like from your phone, and would keep tracking it like automatically. And then as soon as your PNR status would change, it would just send you a notification. When it gets confirmed, it would send you another notification. Now that experience was so preemptive that people just loved it. They were like, this is like a magical app. It just kind of automatically tracks your trips and tells you whether a trip will get confirmed or not. And this is where we saw that this app within 6 months to a year became bigger than the other app that we had, which was focusing mostly on the flights users. And that's when it dawned upon us that this was a much, much bigger opportunity in terms of market that we've been missing out on all this while. And with mobile, it became much easier to solve for them because none of those users would ever have the capability to afford a desktop because desktop is too expensive for them. But because cheap Android devices were available, this like started proliferating like crazy. And then obviously that's when data and AI came into picture, right? So we had so much PNR status data, we started to predict whether a waitlisted ticket would get confirmed or not. And I'm talking about the year 2015 here. Like a lot of companies would probably not even be talking about AI back then. And so, but we were very clear that, this was the only way to kind of build products which could create moats for us. And so this went on, and then, this whole thing about, I still remember when we launched this app, like we would be reading every 1-star review that would come on Play Store. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. And we still do, by the way. We still do today. And we have what, I think we have more than 4.5 million reviews across all the apps as of today.
But we also traveled a lot by trains in the early, we actually went to tier 2, tier 3 towns on trains with our team to experience the pain that some of the travelers used to go through. And, when we were sitting in a train, every now and then we would hear someone asking someone else, "Kahan pahunchi?" which means, "Where's the train right now?" Right? So we were like, this is the highest frequency use case while someone is sitting in a train.
It's like, can you hear me now, basically?
Yeah. And we still remember, like, at least for me, it happened twice. Like, I slept through, like, we're supposed to reach Kanpur. The next station was Etawah, very famous. Everybody knew Etawah. You know why? Because everybody would sleep. Because the train would always reach like at 4 in the morning. And that's like when you're really, really deep in sleep. You miss the train, miss the stop. You go to Etawah, then you come back. And we figured out like this was like one of the biggest problems because people did not know where the train was. Trains are not GPS equipped and nobody knows where it is. The joke is that even the driver doesn't know where the train is. In between two stations, when you're in the middle of nowhere, you have no clue where the train is, right? And so, this whole thing about building something to locate the train in near real time, it was like a huge tech challenge because we had to like crowdsource all the location information and, the telephone cell tower information signals that were coming from the devices of like these millions of people who are using our app, and then kind of make sense of all of that to figure out the exact location, kind of the way in which Waze used to work, like back in the days before Google acquired them. And then that became like the biggest growth hack we've ever had.
I think that was a breakthrough moment.
That was a breakthrough moment.
Because the network effect started to play out as we had more and more people using our app sitting in the trains, and it became more and more accurate. The word of mouth just exploded. Like we went from doing like a few 100,000 downloads a month to like millions of downloads a month within like the next 2 years.
Yeah, right? Without spending anything.
Let's spend some time here because I think this is a really interesting facet where a lot of companies talk about being product first, but they spend millions and tens of millions and more than that in a lot of cases on marketing. At this point in time, I don't think you'd raised that much money relative to the number of users you had in 2014, 15. How much money did you spend on marketing, and what was your viewpoint on marketing?
I take that. I think the best part about the first 5 years was that we spent zero on marketing, but we still went to, like when you invested about 1 million monthly active users, it was almost all organic, right? And even when we had the money and we tried to spend it on certain stuff, when we looked at the ROI, it just didn't make any sense compared to spending more energy on product. Because remember that if you don't have product market fit, and the way to look at product market fit is that the customer love should be so much that people are telling about the app and raving about the app to each other. If you don't have that, then every dollar you spend, you actually are not doing yourself a favor, right? Because if your NPS isn't great, even if you get a new guy, he might just drop off after a while, not tell anybody. So this is the realization that came after. It's not like we didn't make mistakes. We tried those things. We figured out it doesn't work. And one of the things we kind of invented along the way was this content marketing playbook, where we said this social media was coming up, Facebook was taking off, Twitter had been launched. Like, why not leverage these content marketing platforms to create viral content, which doesn't take a lot of time, energy, cost to create, and then it just goes viral if it's built for either educating the audience or humor or something to do with your, something in travel that people can learn. And we actually had an in-house studio back in 2015, 2016, shooting these videos like on a 5,000 rupee, 10,000 rupee budget, right? Which would reach millions of views organically without, like, we didn't need to go on TV to get that. And I think that's one of the things which got invented because we didn't have enough capital, but then over time that became the playbook, right, on how to spend more time on doing that. But both of us believe the best marketing is product, right?
I think you've proven it, right? The capital efficiency is amazing relative to the number of users you have, and the demographic you're going after be very difficult to address if you're spending a lot of money on CAC.
Absolutely. I mean, no, so as far as I can remember, I never met anybody who saw any billboards of WhatsApp to download WhatsApp. Never, right? I mean, it was completely
great product that went viral. Awesome. So things are going really well. Things are starting to move in the right direction. I think you end up raising more money pre-COVID, correct?
Yeah, so we raised money in 2016 from Peak 15, formerly known as Sequoia, and Micromax before that. Before that, Micromax came in. And so I think by 2017, we had raised in aggregate roughly around $21-22 odd million in total, right? So still not a lot of money by today's standards.
Even back then, even by those standards.
Standards.
No, I think by those standards, it wasn't a lot.
Tiny by today's standard, but I think the interesting thing was that we were still not burning a lot. So one thing is that even though there was some burn, we were always very conscious about how much that was at every point of time, right? And we had guardrails around saying, hey, if we're burning X, then we don't hire any more people the next few months and try to manage with what we have, for example. So that discipline was there since day one. But I think the big pivot in 2017 was that, hey, we have this much traffic. And I think when Peak 15 invested, they were like, you have 5-6 million MAUs now, why are you not selling anything, right? And when we looked at what the customers were saying when we funneled traffic to other OTAs, because we were also partnered with OTAs, right? A lot of the problems they came back with, which were post-booking issues, customer service, prices changing when they redirected, etc. I mean, those things you can't solve for them as a Meta, right? And the hand-holding that you can do as an OTA, was becoming very obvious to us that on mobile, it was that much harder to do that level of hand-holding that was required. Once you're in an app, you expect the app to take care of you end-to-end. So around 2017, we took this mental decision to say,
it's a large pivot though, right? This is going from a Metasearch engine to a full-fledged OTA, which is a very large pivot, and it's usually less.
Pivot.
Sorry,
it's a massive pivot.
Yeah, and usually less technology-centric in a lot of ways, right? Because Metasearch is by definition lean. OTAs are usually much larger businesses in terms of headcount because you need customer service, all those things.
Payments.
So how did you deal with that transition?
It was it was not that easy. I think the dots were really connecting nicely because just till that point onwards, like upwards till that point, we had invested a lot into AI and chatbots, etc. So in fact, we showcased Tara,
I remember that.
You must have focused that. That was a proud moment. 2017. And you know what? That gave us the confidence that, hey, I think, if we use this tech to do customer support, then we could create a lot of operating leverage. And that gave us the confidence to pivot into the ODM model. But it was not just that. It was also the fact that we are so obsessed with customer experience, it just kind of made us, it didn't leave us with any choice but to pivot to that model. Because if you really want to control end-to-end customer experience, you got to be completely full stack. And there was no other way to be full stack. I mean, as Meta, we could never be full stack.
But this point in time there's Make My Trip, was quite large. I think AbhiBus, I can't remember if they merged by that point in time or not, but it was also quite large, spending a fair amount of capital, at that point in time. So how did you, address that?
Yeah, it was, we didn't really look at these guys, to be honest. In fact, we rarely look at competition for that matter. Like the biggest problem that we saw was that there was huge problems that of customers which were unsolved, even though they were like OTAs who've been around for like a decade or so. Simple problems of, the fact that every time you try to book, you see a price change or when you have booked, there's so many post-booking issues that people still face issues with, right? You can't web check-in. There's no automatic web check-in sites. There's no decent flight status that people have.
You couldn't reach call centers if you needed help.
Yeah.
Like nobody was picking
It
up
was
phones
horrible.
at one point.
You reach call centers, and ultimately you'd have to kind of talk to those guys, then talk to airlines, talk to 5 different people to get things resolved. So we figured out that it was the level of customer experience in travel was probably a decade or two behind what was already there in e-commerce. It was like archaic. So we thought that if we just solve that, which was our playbook, right? Don't worry about monetization or getting market share. Go ahead and solve those core customer problems. I think everything else will fall into place automatically. It was a huge bet that we were taking because we were just getting into the market where it was already super competitive. People had huge headway already into that market. But we just took that bet. I think the good thing is that I think our investors, like you included, all of you guys, you backed that decision because that's a massive pivot and it has huge business impact. So that was a hard decision that we took, and it was completely backed by the whole board. But we went ahead, and then the rest is history.
And then, so this was 2017, 2018. I actually forget, when did you make your first acquisition? Was it
2021?
2021.
Okay, so let's talk about COVID. Business is moving, things are trending the right way. You have some capital on your balance sheet, and then?
So before that, what happened is, 2017, we pivoted on the train business first on OTA, right? October, November 2017. Yeah. And that gave us confidence that, hey, we know how to run an OTA business, right? Tara was working nicely on that. There was payments were well integrated. There was UPI, which had just come in, right? And we had seen the impact of that starting to come as well. And so we gave us the confidence that we can do this on flights, buses, everything. Now, we were starting to run out of capital again, or on the verge of, sometime around late 2018 or early 2019. You would remember we attempted a fundraise, even spoke to some strategics, but nothing meaningful was coming out as an outcome. And that's one moment where both of us went back to the drawing board, opened up our financials, went deep into what was going on, and said, why the hell aren't we profitable yet, right? Like that was the moment saying, if we can do it, we must do it, right? And one thing that led to that, which is a secret hack I tell all the founders out there, is we started looking at daily P&L and daily cash flow, right? Like companies usually, by the time they do their monthly MIS, it's too late to react because there are decisions you can take every day that impact your cash flows. And it's hard to do because you need to instrument all that data. But we started looking at it at a daily level, and now we look at it at an hourly level. But basically, that discipline went top down into that entire team, saying that, look, every single day we got to cut our burn till the point we become profitable. And so we spent the whole of 2019, actually 3/4 of 2019 doing that. JFM 2020, we were profitable. And then COVID arrives.
I guess it was good you actually made those cuts beforehand, because obviously it would have been even more difficult to survive when your business effectively went to zero in 2020, right? So, I mean, at least you've taken a lot of those cuts proactively. Resilience again. I mean, travel businesses, a lot of businesses went to zero during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, trains we were thinking in our minds that trains, the government would still keep them running, because even during wars, like the China war, etc., like the government did not stop trains, right? But
I think it was the first time since independence that trains
first time in history, right? So our business went down to negligible. I mean, we had maybe some ad revenue, etc., but it was near zero revenue.
How big was your team at that point?
We were, I don't remember the exact number, but we were 200 plus for sure, right, by that time.
Yeah. A little less than that, yeah.
Yeah, about somewhere close to that. And I think like we could sense it was coming. I think there were some cases starting to come in Gurgaon, but there were some countries where COVID was already rampant in first or second week of March, somewhere like that. So we could sense what was coming. The first call we did internally with our leadership was, what do we do about customers who have booked to those places globally where it's evident that it's a pandemic already, right? So there was, I think the early ones were China, US, Singapore, a few, Hong Kong, etc. And we had forward bookings into those places. And I was like, this is harakiri, right? Like, why we would want people to actually go there, and it's obvious that they would want to cancel their bookings. And most companies were not actually giving refunds on time at that point, even if you cancel the ticket. I think we took a very proactive decision at that moment, saying, look, for all the countries which are COVID impacted, no questions asked, we refund the customers today. And we didn't even look at our balance sheet to see if we had the money to do that. We were like,
The
that's
balance
just
sheet was looking very scary.
that was just the right thing to do, right, at that moment of time. So even though we had just turned profitable, remember, we didn't still have a lot of cash, right? And we just, I don't think we even asked the board before doing that, but we actually went ahead and refunded all the customers for international places I had.
And remember that like this refund has a delay because airlines were not in a situation to refund us. And so basically we paid from our books and we barely had a few months of money to pay salaries. So it was a ballsy move.
Yeah, for real.
And the day the lockdown was announced, I think the next day we were doing like a all hands meet with our entire team, where the same playbook we had in 2008 was playing out, and this time it was even more important because it was a humanitarian crisis. Like we could just not imagine a scenario where somebody sitting at home lost their job, they don't know what COVID is, how dangerous it is, and very depressed life, right, for that person. Like we couldn't imagine putting ourselves in that person's shoes. So on that call, the first thing we said is, look, we're both going down to zero salary for as long as the team does not come back to their full salaries.
Which is what we have been doing for years.
Which we were used to by that time, right? and then the leadership team actually had volunteered to do like a 60 to 80% pay cut, graded pay cut, depending on what level they were at. And then the rest of the team was at I think close to 30-40% pay cut. So I think it was just the formula that helped us survive the next few months where we had no revenue coming in.
But we didn't let go of a single person.
It's amazing. It's amazing, absolutely. And it's so you're able to build that culture where people understand that you're in the trenches with them and you're taking pay cuts and salary cuts as well, which is why people remain loyal, obviously, as well.
Absolutely.
Actually, not just loyal. I'll tell you another story. So when the lockdowns happened, it was the first time that our payment gateway was running a negative balance, right? Because we had more refunds than collections. There was nil collections, more refunds. One fine weekend, we discovered we've hit the negative balance limit on one of our core PGs. And the decision was, do we delay the refund till Monday, or do we find some way to make that good on a Saturday? And I post this message on Slack saying, look, this is a problem. We need help from everyone. Is there a way we can find a solution? People volunteered to pitch in personal money. I think a lot of people in our team did it. And we actually put all that money into a refund account, refunded the customers that weekend, and then we paid back our employees when the money started coming in on the Monday. So people have gone beyond just taking like next level of sacrifice, and I think it came because of the feeling that we are all in this together, right? I mean, and then people were manning our customer service desk. So I remember we were getting like 20x the volume on our call centers and our chats.
We had to literally hire more people, and it was like so counterintuitive.
So our entire company did customer support for almost like 2 to 3 weeks, including us, right?
We got some temp people on the payroll as well.
Yeah.
Additionally,
we actually hired more people on customer support because
during that time, like
we were monitoring abandon rates on the calls every single day, and we were like, we don't want people not to be able to reach someone to ask for a status of a reschedule or refund. Extremely proactive there. And on the domestic side, we were probably the only OTA also refunding our convenience fees. We said if there was zero convenience during this time, and it was a huge inconvenience in everyone's life, what are we charging our convenience fees for? We refunded during COVID all the convenience fees that we all charged on those bookings, right?
Amazing. How many near-death experiences have you had, like in terms of like where you're actually worried about making payroll?
Stop counting.
Okay. Well, I think hopefully safe to say it's not going to happen again.
So we can tell you another one. So when the Micromax round was happening, and I think we came to you for a bridge as well, but it was very close to when there was this moment of time where we couldn't do 1 month of salary unless we found a way to fix this. Now, and we needed very fast reaction time. It was close to the first, right? And we took this call
that was crazy.
We took this call on 30th saying, we're going to put money into the company. We didn't have a lot of money ourselves either. So we had to mortgage our personal property
With the places
where we live to put in money to pay salaries on time, right? But we thought it's the right thing to do because the round was imminent. It was going to close in the next 3-4 weeks, right? So we didn't have to trouble our investors as well. But we actually just did this without asking anyone because we felt it was the right thing to do.
Amazing. So let's switch gears a little bit. One thing that's always been amazing is that you've been able to actually acquire businesses and make them work. Walk us through those journeys.
Yeah, so I think the two acquisitions that we did, ConfirmTkt and AbhiBus, both acquisitions, we knew the founders for a few years, I guess.
Yeah, it was like a long-term relationship.
And we'd been tracking them. I mean, usually in these acquisitions, like you like a company, you keep tracking them, you talk to the founders, you talk, sometimes go visit their office if you can. Although in ConfirmTkt's case, most of our conversations, we'd met them once, they'd come to our office, but most of the conversation happened over Zoom calls, like during COVID. So there was all, and I think the environment was so depressing for everyone that it just brought everyone together because we were all in this together in that moment as an industry, right? And we were just, I think one fine day we were just talking to the founders as in, what are you going through? This is what we are going through. How are you dealing with this? And it just so happened that, it just felt the right thing to do was to, if you have a common vision and you're working towards saying, we want to enable the best experience for train travelers. Both companies wanted to do that. We said, why don't you join hands and build something bigger within our ecosystem? And it just happened, in February 2021, I think we closed that one. But the conversation started in the middle of the first lockdown when nobody had anything to do. Right?
But we really liked them, because they were also underdogs like us.
Yeah.
They were also super frugal. They had not raised a lot of money. And culturally, we were so similar. They had that same kind of resilience, surviving through so many things, frugality, and they're incredibly smart people as well. So
incredible set of people. Yeah, and I remember that when we actually signed that term sheet, we didn't know where the money would come from to buy that company, right? But we
Is there a stopped before? You're fine.
we'll figure it out, right? Because we like them so much, right? And I don't think Dinesh even knows that today.
But we took a debt to actually buy them.
but we actually, Rahul from Trifecta, they stepped in and they helped us close that one. But essentially, I think the conviction level was so high there that, we were willing to, again, if needed, we were willing to put in personal money at that time to make that happen.
We told Rahul that, Rahul, you know what, this is the booking.com moment.
Yeah, but the business, still was obviously very slow with COVID at that point in time on both sides, right? So what, so you just had that much conviction in the founder, and that's what led you to the deal, or?
And conviction that everything will come back. And, I think all of us believe that when travel comes back, it will come back with a vengeance, right? So all this pent up would, lead to pops, and nobody's modeling that. Nobody was modeling that at that point. And we were like, this will all really help play out very well if it works. By that time, there was no second wave, no third wave, which did happen just immediately post that.
It was all in, basically.
Yep, this is the rebirth chapter I think we're in right now. So, so things start coming back, 2022 or so, and since then it's been up and to the right for the most part. When did you buy AbhiBus? I forget.
2021 August.
Same year.
So again, very
just
frugal
doubling
team.
down with no money.
Yeah. Similar sort of mindset of founders, frugal. Sudhakar had been running this without any institutional capital for a while, right? Almost the same vintage as us, about 17 years, like 16, 17 years old back then. And I think, we had spent a lot of time even in their office meeting the rest of the team, and we had a level of conviction that, look, on the bus side, there's only 2 material players, and they were the second largest. There was no reason why bus wouldn't do well in a country investing so much in roads, right? We have expressways coming up everywhere. I think the fastest growing network of expressways globally is in India. So I think there was a deep conviction on the market. And again, the team, amazing team. We are so proud of all those guys. Just happened at the right moment of time. It's very interesting that between February 21, January 21, and August 21, we did 2 acquisitions, 1 fundraise, and 1 DRHP filing in parallel. These are things we did, and this is all sitting at home. I was actually, in those days, we traveled to my in-laws in Jaipur. I was sitting there. I'd taken they had an attic, which I converted into my office.
So you're saying work from home is more productive? Is that what you're saying?
There was no option back then.
There was no option back then, but It's incredible how much we achieved that year, right? In hindsight, the other thing we didn't cover was we built our flagship product Ixigo Assured during the first lockdown. You want to talk to that?
That was crazy. Like all these things, like the lockdowns was creating so much uncertainty, like in the minds of people. Like we faced that, like there were like lockdown rules which were changing every day. You took a flight and then guess what? You can't land there because it's locked down, or you fell sick. So we said, okay, how about building something which could solve for that? So we said, okay, the whole full refund of the cancellation policy for airlines was like it was way too cryptic to figure out for people, and it was very, very different, totally fragmented. None of them are identical. So we said, okay, we build one uniform, product called Assured, and it gives you a full guarantee of full refund, no questions asked. You can just go ahead, cancel, give you full refund. And the best part about this product was that we focus really hard on giving the money back instantly, because that's the biggest problem customers face most of the time. And we've seen that, like building trains, that especially on train side, when you book a ticket, like the chances of the ticket failing to book is very high, and the money gets logged. Now think about a guy who's probably got $1,500 in his bank account, booked a ticket worth 1,000 rupees, and then can't book another ticket, right? The money is blocked. They can't reach out to the call center of people, etc. So
They usually reach out to the boards.
Exactly.
I've gotten a few emails over the years, not from Ixigo, but in general.
in general, that's how people deal with it, because getting money is instant for everybody. Everybody wants to collect money as soon as possible. When it comes to giving back to people, they can take their own sweet time. And we said, like, what, we'll give it back instantly to people. So we
No
worked
questions
so
asked.
hard. No questions asked. We'll give instant refund back to people, and we worked incredibly hard on that to make sure that the process of refund was instant. So as soon as you click on the button, like there was this joke where people were building a product demo of this thing in the video, he clicked on the cancel button, there was a WhatsApp message that came from the top instantly, like in the same second. It was actually the refund message. We forgot to put that in the video because it was just notification, but that's how instant it was, and that became, I think that became one of the biggest reasons why we could scale up our revenues from that.
And do you think that's one of the reasons why? I mean, conventional wisdom is that if you're doing a startup in India or a consumer startup in India, you go after the top 100 million people. That's where the money lies. You guys have taken a very different approach, where you're going for the Bharat or lower end of the pyramid, whatever you want to call it, which has been very challenging for most companies. Most companies have not been able to figure it out because of the reasons we talked about, the CAC issues, the low ARPUs in general. What would you tell a founder today that wants to build for that demographic going forward outside of travel?
So I think there's a misnomer that people think that Indians are price sensitive. I think they're or price conscious, as they call it. They're value conscious or value sensitive, which means that it's not like the next billion users or tier 2, 3 folks or middle of the pyramid, bottom of the pyramid people cannot spend money. It's just that they need to find a very good reason on why they need to pay more, right? I mean, if you think about it, we charge agent service charges on all the train tickets we book, right? And people paid very happily for it because they believe that we give them a better quality experience and customer service, etc., that they value. Or Ixigo Assured, for that matter, where they can, in a way, they can lock availability, because if you book a train ticket 2 days prior, you're not going to get any seat. But if you buy it on Assured like 2 months prior, you can decide 1 day prior whether you want to go or not. In fact, you can decide up to 4 hours prior to the train leaving that, get the full money back if you need to. Now, this comes from just spending a lot of time understanding the customer pain areas and finding what they value. Because once you find what they value, you can actually charge for it, right? Even if the person comes from a socio-demographic background where the assumption is they can't pay for anything, but the assumption is wrong. Right? I mean, the cheapest selling car in the country, the cheapest car in the country is not the top selling car, right? And there's a reason for it, because people do value some part of the experience which they're willing to pay a small premium for. You just have to find in every category, what that experience is. And that's the tough part, identifying the problem that's worthy solving for them. Yeah.
Great. A few closing questions here. One, I'd like to talk about AI. We've alluded to it earlier. It's obviously the big topic globally right now. What do you think the impact on OTAs or travel in general will be from AI going forward?
I think AI is it's more of a secular trend. I think irrespective of the sector, every sector is going to be a beneficiary of AI because this whole productivity, efficiency, improvement, etc., that's going to happen. It's going to impact all sectors. So everybody's going to become more efficient. We've seen that trend happening, that people have kind of slowed down on hiring globally across sectors. So I think generally AI is going to make things more efficient and create more leverage, operating leverage in the business. Everybody's going to become more efficient, more profitable, etc. And I think travel is no exception. I mean, at that level, in a more generic way, this is going to impact travel in the same way. Like in a more specific way, I think one of the other things is like customer support we talked about. Like, so there are two angles to it. One is that customer support is getting kind of almost automated, and it will get to a point where you would be able to kind of, you won't be able to figure out if you're talking to a human being or to a bot over a phone call, and it would be indistinguishable. It's even happening right now. I mean, we do that for a lot of use cases internally in our at Ixigo as well. And that trend is irreversible. It has happened, and there's no looking back, which means that the whole customer support thing is going to get completely automated, and that's the big leverage that every business will experience, including travel. The other thing that is again horizontal is that the efficiency of people working every day. And when they say AGI, I mean, for me, AGI is more about replacing white collar jobs. That's the level of AGI. That's what people are talking about, because everything else is super intelligence, which is like a little farther away. And so when that level is reached, it just means that you should be able to spawn like several co-workers like inside your organization of different kind of skill sets. You could say, okay, I want like 2 senior software developers or 2 senior product analysts or 2 designers for that matter. Like we're looking at ways in which we can, because AI has also become multimodal now, which means that it can understand user experience, it can understand products, etc. It could design things. In fact, it could even review your designs. So we review our designs. So one of the things we do in our company is that I review designs, etc. for every product that we build. And now people have started to kind of review it with AI before they come to me, because they know that if they come to me and I'm able to figure out like 5, 6, or maybe a dozen problems with that, then there's a problem. so they get it pre-reviewed with AI, and then they come to me. And I think at some point we'll reach a level where I would not be able to find flaws in the design or the product that we're building. So I think we are probably at the cusp of this huge inflection point, probably, which is going to be the biggest inflection point in the history of humanity. And once that happens, I guess there's no looking back. I mean, things will change in ways which are fundamental. I'm not able to think about what kind of role human beings would play, but think about it like, something similar happened in the past when computers came, right? I mean, there were architects designing your houses and buildings on pen and paper, and computers came and they said that, okay, what happens? What now? Our jobs are gone. But no, far from that. Like, the jobs were not really gone. They could use computers to design much more efficiently. So what used to take like 3 months, they could do that in a week or maybe a few days. And then that's the trick. Like, if you have so much more time and you have so much more compute power, etc., what do you do? So they figured out ways in which they could add more value. So you could not build 3D walkthroughs and simulations on pen and paper, but you could do that on computer. So those were like the new things that came up that technology enabled. And so at this point of time, people will find it hard to imagine what people can do once everything that they are doing has been eliminated. But I guess that, this whole thing about knowing what you want and your creativity is the only thing that would matter, like, in the future. Everything else can actually be done. Because think about it, like all the heavy lifting, everything that needs to be done with perfection, with speed, etc., can be done by AI. But you should know what you want, essentially.
And just to add what it does to our industry, right? If AI does 80% of what I need to spend my time and energy on, like, guess what? I want to spend more time on leisure and travel, right? A lot of people would say that. So I think it might create more demand over time for travel, because people want to spend money on experiences, right? Especially after COVID, where they've seen, like, you only live once. And there's a lot of upswing we expect for the entire industry in terms of people wanting to value what they spend time on, because some of the even higher value added things that they did can be done by technology, right? and so they can actually leverage the technical tools, free up their time, spend more time on leisure. Why not?
Do you think we've hit that tipping point where you look at China 15, 20 years ago, outbound travel just skyrocketed and has gone for a long time? I think it's 200 million.
It will, because look at the per capita income, right? Like I think the critical point, Ravi, is $4,000 GDP per capita. It happened at that level in Southeast Asia, happened at that level in China. I think we are just a few years away now from that happening in India. The other thing is personalization, right? I mean, if you look at, we talked about Assured, or Rajnish was talking about, I think there the pricing is completely AI driven right now, right? Yeah. Like if you think about some of the content that people see, right, in our apps, it's all personalized. I mean, the recommendations we give all personalized, right? So I think you're getting into a world where you're talking about an AI personal travel assistant being the default expectation a customer will have from every travel app, right?
I mean, it's exactly what we presented in 2017. If you look back at the presentation of Tara, it was all about the fact that Tara knew exactly what you did in the past, like which trips you took, what was your frequent flyer programs, etc. And then it was able to preemptively come and tell you that, guess what, August is coming around the corner. I think it's the right time to book. Yeah. And since I know where we've been, probably you should book this. So that's exactly the experience that I think awaits the world in the near future. And I think this is the best time to kind of build and showcase that, because back in the days, it was incredibly hard to build something like that because there was no tech available to do that. But now it's that everything is kind of falling into place, and
I believe that if any company is well prepared for that world, it's us, because we have all the building blocks in place, right? And we think that, we've always been ahead in putting a bet on what's coming next. And for us, that big bet right now is AI, right? And everything we do, looking at it through that lens, right?
It's basically hard to do that because most companies would not put aside like 10-15% of their bandwidth resources to work on something that one day might become disruptive. Because if you do that, then what happens is that when actual disruption happens, you are not the company that gets disrupted. You are the one probably creating that disruption. And so it's a long-term bet. So you might be spending 10 years to build a research team and keep working on that. It might not pay off, but when such a technology breakthrough happens, or a landscape or ecosystem evolution happens, then that's when you ride on that.
Awesome. Well, last question. Where are you guys going next? IPO is done. It's been a long road, obviously, but it's just the beginning now of a new chapter for you. Where are you guys going on vacation?
I'm finally taking a long-awaited vacation. Next week, I'm off to Turkey with a few friends of mine from IIT.
Was that AI inspired, or was that more like?
Well, interesting story, but I was very optimistic about the timelines, and I got it booked like a couple of months in advance. But
it's assured, so you're okay.
It was booked with Ixigo assured.
There you go, so you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, we wish we could get more time to travel as frequently as our users do. But
well, if everything you say about AI is correct, you will have more time.
Let's hope so.
And you, anywhere exciting?
No, not going right now. Still planning. I mean, somebody has got to hold the fort while
he's off in Turkey, right? So, well, thanks again for taking the time today. Obviously, congratulations again on a fantastic IPO and a fantastic partnership for many years now. Really appreciate it, and really happy for you. I think it's just been, obviously, it's been a very bumpy ride, at times, and it's smooth. And it's very happy for you guys to see that everything work out so well.
Thanks you so much, Ravi. I think Elevation has been a great partner and supporter. Very patient, and I think you've been a great sounding board for ideas. You've often challenged us on things and pushed us hard, but that's always been for good.
The 13 years is a long time, so
13 years is kind of the average in India, though, I would say. I think it's a 10 to 15 journey. I think the notion that something happens quickly in 5 years is wrong. I think in most cases it's a 10 to 15 year journey, and every company we've partnered with has ups and downs. There's no company that's up and to the right. So I think that resilience is super important for this country if you want to be here for the long run. So congrats again.
Thank you.
Thank you.